The tone, I mean, it's a protest out here. Everybody's, pretty spirited, pretty peaceful, though. We haven't seen any issues at all. The crowd is quite significant. I can't see any size change over the last 3-4 hours that we've been out here. It's been consistent, if not growing. I mean, there are people, I don't know if you're looking at my shot right now, but as far down the street here, looking up on Harrison here, there's just people as far as the eye can see. And that's the way it's been for hours. I haven't seen it let up at all.
And Jake, what's the mix that you're seeing? We did just see what you were seeing through your camera just a moment ago. Now we're looking at an aerial shot, but we did. What's the mix in terms of protesters versus supporters that you've seen and that you're seeing now? Are you able to give us a general sense?
So from my position, I'm about 30 feet from the front line right now because our signal was dropping out way up there. But I'm not seeing any supporters for Trump out here. These are all Bernie supporters and just supporters of people for anyone against Trump. They're just I move the camera here. They're just supporting free speech, anti-hate, fuel the burn. I mean, these are the messages. You're chanting in both English and Spanish. Lots of different nationalities of flags out here. It's a very diverse group, but totally peaceful from what I've seen, and the crowds have not gone down at all over the last 4 hours. If anything, it's gone up.
And totally peaceful, but just to be clear, it sounds like you're really in an area where it's all protesters. So you're amongst people who are on the same side.
Correct. Yeah. When I got out here about 3 o'clock, you could see on, I don't know if my shot's up right now on the right side of the screen. So on one side of the screen, they had the barricade for protesters. I know at some of these events they like to have a specific area for the protesters. This is way beyond that. This is the entire street and the sidewalk. When we were in there, it was shoulder to shoulder for multiple blocks. I mean, you were just had to maneuver your way through. So all we're seeing are supporters, protesters, and we're not seeing anybody pro-Trump out here. At least not out on this side.
All right. Jake, no, thank you very much. And just so everyone know, this went on for Donald Trump was half an hour late, and then the surprise cancellation of this rally, and then about 20 minutes where we saw scuffles, punching, fighting inside, some pretty very scary moments. Not enough law enforcement to fully deal with it, but now it looks like it's starting to dissipate. People are starting to leave calmer. We will see what happens and transpires over the next few minutes, and as this night continues, a major night. Let's go now to Anderson Cooper.
All right, good evening. The pictures tell the story tonight, and it is an ugly story. Near pandemonium at a Trump rally in Chicago. Thousands of protesters and Trump supporters, you can see it right there, clashing on the campus of the University of Illinois in Chicago. The event was postponed. Donald Trump didn't take the stage. Other reports say it was flat out canceled. Surrounding it all, a history of violence, alleged violence at some of these rallies, with some blaming the candidate for tolerating or in some cases even encouraging it. Our Jim Acosta is inside the UIC pavilion, joins us right now. Jim, you've been there for quite some time. It looks like it's emptied out behind you, but tell me what's happening now and how we got to this point.
Yeah, Jen, I can tell you right now that the situation has gotten under control, which is the good news. Chicago police came in by the droves here in the last 15, 20 minutes and started to clear this crowd out of here. Basically, what happened is shortly after 7 o'clock your time, 6 o'clock our time, there was an announcement made by the Trump campaign that this rally was going to be canceled because of their consultations with law enforcement officials. And as soon as that happened, this place erupted into chaos. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of protesters who were on hand here who started cheering because they were able to stop a Donald Trump rally from taking place. That started basically a almost domino effect where you had Trump supporters yelling at them, and then there was pushing and shoving back and forth. Police at the beginning they just weren't in the proper numbers to break up all of this. The private security, the arena security, they just weren't in sufficient numbers to stop all of this, and that's why it spiraled out of control. It took a good 15 to 20 minutes before things got under control. We saw pockets of different scuffles breaking out throughout this arena, and then slowly but surely you saw Chicago police officers filing in, going down the staircase onto the arena floor here, separating these fights, and then pulling these protesters and supporters out of this arena. But John, it took a very long time, and it was a completely ugly scene. And as you were just mentioning, it's been building up to something like this. We could all feel it. We who covered the Trump campaign on a daily basis, you would see a scuffle here, a scuffle there. There have been some recent rallies where you'd see a couple of dozen protesters in the stands. Those folks might lock arms, and it might be difficult for law enforcement or security to get them out of here. But what we saw tonight as it was building up to this, John, I saw a whole section of protesters, several hundred protesters just behind me right here. That is why you started to have this volatile mix, because it was just impossible for the security here to get those people out of here. Now, I understand outside of the arena right now, you still have some protests going on. You might even have some back and forth going on with police. But inside this arena right now, John, I can tell you things are much calmer. It is a dramatically different scene than what we saw break out here about 45 minutes ago, John.
Jim, stand by. Let me read you the actual statement from the Trump campaign as to what happened. It says, Mr. Trump just arrived in Chicago and after meeting with law enforcement has determined that for the safety of all the tens of thousands of people that have gathered in and around the arena, tonight's rally will be postponed to another date. Thank you very much for your attendance, and please go in peace. And just a few minutes ago, we got a statement from the Chicago Police Department itself telling us that as of now, no arrests have been made and no one injured. And I hope that does remain the case, and we're lucky if that is the case based on some of the tension and the clashes that we saw inside that arena. That's video from earlier on the left-hand side of your screen. On the right-hand side is picture from right now outside the arena where thousands of people, I mean, it was hundreds before, now it's thousands of people are gathered. There were people outside the arena for hours and hours, and now there are even more as people are leaving the arena. Jim, just to be clear about one thing, we were watching those pictures from inside. There were hundreds, again, if not thousands, of anti-Trump protesters inside this event. It's clear what happened at this event is that people protesting Trump infiltrated it. They were inside there. They were waiting for Donald Trump to take the stage to protest them. And to a certain extent, a lot of what we're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen, this video, is them, these people protesting against Trump who got in there in enormous numbers.
That's right, and we saw this building up throughout the day. There were announcements, news stories playing out in the local media all day long from Latino groups, from civil rights groups, from progressive groups, Muslim American groups here in Chicago, saying that they were going to try to disrupt this rally or at least protest this rally. And you saw hundreds of those people from those groups coming in here essentially to stage what was supposed to be, I think, a peaceful protest of this Trump rally. But because of the numbers of people, the volatile mix here, because of the clashes with the Trump supporters, that is why things spiraled out of control here. And as you were saying earlier, John, we've seen this build up over time, over the course of the last several weeks. This is something that I think the Trump campaign could have expected. John, you've been to Chicago many times, just like I've been to Chicago many times. This is not the only venue in Chicago where you could hold a rally. This is the University of Illinois at Chicago. It's one of the most ethnically, religiously diverse areas of the whole city. There are areas outside of Chicago, the collar conservative counties, a bit more Republican, where you have arenas, auditoriums, and venues and so forth, where you could stage a rally and probably not have what unfolded here tonight, which was total chaos. The whole situation was completely out of control. Law enforcement did not have a handle on it. The private security did not have a handle on it. And honestly, this could have erupted into a full-scale riot, I think, John, had things not gotten under control over the course of that 15 or 20 minutes when things finally did get under control, when the Chicago police came in and started breaking up these fights. Because clearly, there were people here who were here to cause trouble. Let's make no mistake about it. They were here to cause trouble, but it could have been a whole lot worse. Luckily, not a lot of injuries that we saw here, but certainly a lot of scuffling, a lot of pushing and shoving, and certainly not what you want to see when you're in the middle of a presidential campaign. It's hard to get your hands around the fact, John, that this was supposed to be a political rally building up to these primaries that are taking place on Tuesday. Illinois is one of those primaries on Tuesday. But what unfolded here was just total chaos and really just sort of a sad picture of where the country is right now. It's just so bitterly divided. The atmosphere is so poisonous. People are just so on edge. At some point, you would think Donald Trump's going to have to come in and say, instead of celebrating some of the edginess at these rallies, where he might have to tone it down. And I imagine that the Trump campaign is discussing that right now, John.
Jim, stand by, because I want you to stay part of this discussion, but I also want to bring in Maggie Haberman, presidential reporter for the New York Times, David Gergen, of course, CNN political analyst who's advised many, many presidents. I think John King of Inside Politics is joining us from Washington, too. And Maggie, just bring us up to speed again as we're looking at tape from before of the clashes on the floor of this arena just after the Donald Trump event was canceled. On the right-hand side of your screen, you're seeing aerials as, as thousands of people are still outside the arena trying to figure out what to do. But Maggie, this is not happening in a vacuum. I mean, this event, a lot of what we're seeing now was caused by protesters against Donald Trump, but their anger is not, again, in a vacuum. There has been rough stuff at Trump events from Trump supporters in recent days.
There's also been rough stuff suggested from the candidate himself over many weeks. I mean, I remember Trump at the end of February at a rally in Las Vegas talked about a protester who was taken out. He claimed, I don't know if this is true or not, but he claimed that guy was swinging punches, he was misbehaving, and Trump said, and I've never seen this before from a presidential candidate, let alone somebody who is on track to be the nominee, as he is right now, I'd like to punch that guy in the face. That is what Trump said. It got very undercovered because it was in the midst of all sorts of other things going on. Trump has said things like that. He has lamented the good old days. He did this again in North Carolina the other day when a protester was sucker punched by one of Trump's supporters. So there is a physics law here. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Trump has on the one hand said, I don't condone this. He has on the other hand said, you know, these guys started it, and therefore that's what happens.
So let me just show the video of what Maggie was just talking about right there, the punch at this event in North Carolina where a Trump supporter, you can see it right here, just out and out sucker punches a protester right there, and that man is facing charges now. The Trump campaign, disavows any contact with this man, says what that man does is not our fault, but again, this is the type of thing that has been happening at some of these events, and Donald Trump himself says he would like to Trump punch protesters in the nose. John King, who joins us, I think, from Washington right now, and like all of us, John, you've covered a lot of political events, a lot of political rallies. I've never seen anything like what we just saw tonight. I've never seen an event canceled at the last minute where the candidate doesn't take the stage because of conflict.
And Maggie makes a key contextual point. Look, as Jim Acosta said, a lot of these protesters came up. They wanted to be on the news. They came. They not only wanted to make a political statement against Donald Trump. They wanted to disrupt his event. So they came with the motivation of causing a problem. The question then is what happens after that and what tone does the candidate set? It's not Donald Trump's fault, quote unquote, that people want to protest him. That is their right, and it's his right to have his positions on the issues. But because he has repeatedly, as Maggie noted, essentially said, I'd like to punch this guy. Or the old days we'd rip him out of his seat. Or he's used strong language against them. That does set a tone for many of his supporters. And when you see that guy get up out of the seat and sucker punch a guy who's being escorted out of the arena, again, Donald Trump didn't tell him to do that, but maybe the guys followed the news coverage and heard Donald Trump say several times, I wish I could do it, or it's okay, he said earlier, when some Black Lives Matter protesters were at one of his events, it was okay to rough the guy up a little bit. This is a test for Donald Trump. He's never been a politician before. As Maggie noted, at the moment it looks like he's on a path to be the nominee of the Republican Party. He is, whether he gets the nomination or not, at the moment a leading spokesman for the Republican Party and the leading spokesman for his many followers who are, new people are coming to vote in America. That's a good thing, right? We want more people to participate and to vote. But this is a test of his leadership now to say, okay, these people disagree with me. These people have every right to be in the streets. To try to talk to them. At a moment when his biggest challenge, immediate challenge, is trying to unify the Republican Party, when he looks at these pictures, he should probably have the message that there's a bigger unification, a bigger unity, a bigger, at least, step back and break the ice here somehow, break the tension challenge for Donald Trump.
What you do see is successful protests tonight. I mean, these protesters went to this event to make their voice heard, perhaps to disrupt it, and it worked. Donald Trump canceled the event. David Gergen, you now think Donald Trump needs to do something. He needs to get out in front of this. I guess it's not in front now because it's already happened. He has to make a statement.
He certainly does. Listen, this is maybe one of the most important moments of the entire campaign. This could cost him the nomination. it could also catapult him. We don't know which way it's going to cut. I think a lot of people are going to be frightened and horrified. We had this kind of violence in Chicago in 1968 Democratic Convention. 48 years later, we still talk about it. Yeah, we had this kind of violence in George Wallace's campaign when he used language similar to Trump, and bad things came out of that. There were a lot of fisticuffs, and eventually the candidate himself was shot. So this is very dangerous. And here's the deal: the candidate must set the tone for his rallies. That's his responsibility. As Maggie has pointed out, as others have said, he has set a tone that encourages his supporters to go after and punch people, and it naturally draws out bigger and bigger protests, and it sets the stage for this kind of incendiary, climactic moment. And so this is a test of his leadership to be president, to show that he can unify in the way he claims. And so what he has to do, I think he has to go to the country tomorrow, no later than this weekend, and make it clear that while he wants to have rallies, it's critically important that they be peaceful, that people come in peace, and they leave in peace.
Meg, you've been covering Donald Trump for a long time. Do you have any sense that that's the type of thing he might do when just earlier today he was saying sometimes you need to fight back at these rallies?
I'll do you one better. I spoke to him at about 6 o'clock our time, so that was 5 o'clock in Chicago. And when he was on his way to this rally, he gave no indication that there was going to be a cancellation. He told me that he was expecting it to get rough, in his words, but he did not think that they had warning that there were going to be a lot of protests. But he at no point mentioned sort of what was coming. It was clearly on his mind. I do not believe that he is going to go do something that is completely counter to his message and say, and we have seen Donald Trump at various points in this campaign say one thing and then say a completely different thing. So he will say, I'm a unifier, but I want to punch that protester in the face. I don't think that he is going to say something that is going to be something of a message of harmony tomorrow. He does, however, as David says, and as John says, he is going to have to address this. I don't know that it is going to hurt him in the contests that we're facing on Tuesday.
Well, that's a great point. David Gergen said a moment ago that this is the type of thing, if he doesn't handle it the right way, they could cost him the nomination. But John King, you look at the type, you know demographics, you know who is supporting Donald Trump. Do you think that Donald Trump taking a stand against these protesters will hurt him with the people who support him?
Well, you don't have to you don't have to embrace the protesters to say we need to have this debate in a civil way. Look, Donald Trump is running for the Republican nomination. Participation in the Republican primaries is overwhelmingly white. If we want to make this a white-black or a white versus African Americans and Latino issues, there are policy reasons. Many of these protesters are there, whether it's Donald Trump's views on immigration or whether it's Donald Trump's views on other things. And again, some of them came just to cause trouble. Let's just be honest about their motivation. Some of them are out there to disrupt his event and to get in his face and to see what he would say. But this is an interesting challenge, as David noted, for Mr. Trump, to be able to say, you have a right to protest, I have a right to speak, and I'm going to speak, and I'm going to speak my mind, and I'm not going to change my positions, but I'm going to urge my followers to be peaceful. If there's a problem in the room, let's let the security people deal with it. Let's put our arms by our sides, maybe shut our mouths, and let it pass. Don't turn up the volume, if you will. That's a question for Mr. Trump. There are also other candidates in this race at the moment, 3 of them, and one of the things you saw in the debate last night, especially from Senator Rubio and Senator Cruz, was an attempt to say Donald Trump is not presidential. He is not up to the job of being not only a commander-in-chief, but the leader of the country. A president has to lead the country at big moments. The current president has had a number of mass shootings on his watch. Sometimes you have events that happen around the world. And so we have one president at a time, and that president often has to try to bring the country together at very difficult times. And as people are picking a president, that's one of the, that should be, anyway, one of the tests. Is this a person I can see in the Oval Office when these type of thing, when a big thing happens, who can step out and get the country to take a breath and give pause and reflect on the gravity of the moment? This, as David Gergen noted, comes at a very interesting time in this campaign, and there's a question as to how Mr. Trump reacts to it. There's also a question as to how the others do.
David, you said it could cost him the nomination. You think it could lose Trump voters with the voters who support him?
Yes, sir. I think a lot of people are going to look at these pictures and be frightened. There are going to be a lot of people. You've got to think that when you elect a president, what is life going to be like in the next 4 years with this person in that office? If this represents the future, if this kind of chaos and the lack of control and the lack of leadership represent the future, a lot of people are going to walk away from it, as attractive as they may find Donald Trump. I think many of his supporters will look at this and go just the other way. They came to cause trouble, they shut him down, that's unfair, he's our candidate, and they will come out in larger numbers. But I guarantee you, most American people like their politics a lot more peaceful than this.
Maggie, people are watching this Chicago in March saying, if this is Chicago in March, what will Cleveland in July look like at the Republican convention with a Trump nominee?
It's a very important question, and we assume that it will be a Trump nomination, but it might be fighting around that as well. But conventions tend to be much more controlled environments. People know that protests are coming. I remember the Republican National Convention in New York City in 2004. There was a widespread awareness. The police were very engaged in what was happening. I'm sure that'll happen in Cleveland too. What is striking, and this has been said on this panel before, I think Jim Acosta said it earlier too, it's an out of control scene here. The police clearly didn't have a handle on it, despite the fact that there were warnings that there were going to be hundreds upon hundreds of protesters. Trump's private security didn't have a handle on it, despite the fact that Trump's security clearly knows that there have been protests at his rallies. And one of the things that is striking to me about the protests, these are not protests that, as you said, I have never seen anything like this, and this is my fourth presidential cycle I have never witnessed a scenario where, because Trump campaigns basically through rallies, this is the only way where people can protest him, because the way he communicates is either through the media or through these large events. One of the things that is crucial to the Trump candidacy, to this air of strength that he projects, is the element of control, the illusion of control, and his ability to command the room. And what the protesters realized in the last month is, if we have these rolling waves of disruptions, not just one, not just two periodically, but ongoing. He said last weekend in Florida, clearly irritated at one point in Orlando, can the protesters stop so we can speak for a few seconds? This was getting to him, and so I don't know whether this was, if this was a security concern as to why he didn't go on, and that certainly could be a piece of it. It's not like the security issue was resolved, and as Jim said, it could have been much worse.
I want to say two things. First of all, number one, again, a short time ago, the Chicago Police Department did tell us that as of a few minutes ago, there had been no arrests made and no injuries, which indicates, as bad as it looks on the left-hand side, that's video from earlier tonight, as bad as it looks, that eventually they did get the situation under control. On the right-hand side of the screen, you're looking at live pictures right now from the street, where there are a bunch of people now, maybe a little bit less, maybe fewer people out there than before, but they do look to be standing around peacefully. So hopefully this situation is diffused, and as bad as it looks or looked in that video you're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen, eventually the police came in and took care of the situation. Joining us by phone right now is former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino. Dan, I'm glad you're with us right now. Help us understand the security around these events. I mean, Donald Trump, is a candidate right now who does have Secret Service protection. What kind of precautions are taken at these events to keep not just the candidate safe, but the people in the crowd safe? Or is crowd safety even an issue?
Yeah, well, yes, it is. When you're triaging your needs, crowd control is top 2 or 3 every time, because an unruly crowd is clearly dangerous to the candidate. I just, I'm having a tough time with this entire conversation, though, because the tone of it has been strange. It seems like there's this eagerness to put this on Trump, and as a former Secret Service agent who is, I ran for office, I think that's clear, as a Republican, but who proudly put my butt on the line for Barack Obama and would do it again 10 out of 10 times and twice on Sunday. I don't see how this is a Trump issue. Listen, I'm a Cruz supporter. I already endorsed him, but blaming Trump for this is or even insinuating that Trump had something to do with a near violent protest at his rally that put public servants in danger and a protectee running for president in a democracy. I have to tell you, I don't get it, having been on both sides of this. I really don't.
Dan, let me say one thing. First of all, we made clear that what happened tonight was that hundreds, if not thousands, of anti-Trump protesters staged what is clearly a demonstration on the floor of this event and managed to stop it. Their presence there is what had this event called off. We have made that clear, and that is different than anything we've seen before in this campaign to date. But what is also different in this campaign than anything most of us have ever seen is the level of tension and the atmosphere, the charged atmosphere at Trump events, where you get Trump supporters, like we saw in North Carolina earlier this week, sucker punching a protester. And when you have a candidate who says things like, I wanted to punch that person in the nose, and I remember the good old days when protesters were carried out on stretchers. This is language that we do not normally hear when you cover campaigns, or as you have done, run-in campaigns. It just doesn't happen in
John,
modern
I don't
American
disagree
politics.
with you at all. I mean, I'm not supporting Trump. Like I said, I've been a public advocate for a different candidate on the Republican side. I don't think it's productive at all. I gave an interview to a media outlet just a week ago where I said it's probably making the job of the Secret Service very difficult. You know, my problem with this, though, is it just seems when it's a Republican candidate that they're held to a completely different standard. I mean, we've seen this kind of nasty rhetoric emanating from the left, and there's always this interest to run and silo it. Say, oh, it's just them, they don't speak, for the movement. We've had a few knuckleheads at rallies that have done some really stupid things, in some cases criminal things, like assaulting people. But I think it's very dangerous, for us to, somehow pin this on a candidate who hasn't broken any laws. He's running on a platform I don't agree with. Clearly, I don't think it's helpful, and I don't think it's helpful to the Secret Service either. But, I don't know. I think as us in the press and us as commentators, it's very dangerous to somehow insinuate that, Trump should, be squelched somehow? I don't think this is going to hurt his campaign at all. I'll be honest with you. I think the left is trying to get him elected, these activists, by doing things like this. It only fires up his supporters.
Dan, stand by 1 second. Maggie Haberman wants to get into this discussion.
Yeah, I just want to disagree that I think that either A, that anybody is quote-unquote pinning this on Trump. As was said, I think we are talking about the language the candidate uses, which I think we would say whether it was Ted Cruz or Ben Carson or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, if this was taking place at a Bernie Sanders rally, it would also be covered the same way.
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. Well, I disagree, sir.
Bernie Sanders appeared at Liberty University and got a standing ovation. It's a conservative Christian college. This doesn't happen. That's the whole point. This only happens when it's a Republican candidate. That's the point. When does this happen on the left?
I'll tell you exactly, Dan. I appreciate your service, and thank you, and I respectfully disagree, along with Maggie. In 1968 and 1972, there was a candidate named George Wallace. He encouraged people to punch back. He encouraged people to stand up to any protesters, and there were a lot of fisticuffs that came out of that at his rallies. And eventually he got shot himself, as you know, and badly wounded. It was terrible. It was terrible. In 2008. When John McCain was running at the Sarah Palin rallies, and by the way, the press covered George Wallace heavily, just because he was a Democrat did not keep him back. And the Democrats lost in '68 after their convention when there was so much violence. They got really hammered for it. So it's not a partisan thing. But in the John McCain convention, or his campaign of 2008, at the Sarah Palin rallies, we had similar things going on. When people were calling Barack Obama all sorts of names, the press came down hard on those rallies, that's to be sure. But what happened? John McCain understood and took responsibility for what was going on in the Sarah Palin rallies. At a rally, he told a woman who was talking about Obama being an Arab and how he's going to destroy the country and all the rest, he stood up and said, enough is enough. We're going to treat this man with decency. We're going to treat him with respect. And he changed the tone of his campaign and put an end to it. That's what we're saying about Donald Trump. You have to agree that he has taken a very, very encouraging view toward people.
Dan, hang on one second. Hang on one second, everyone. I want to go to CNN's Jeff Zeleny, who is outside right now on the streets, because I want to get a sense of what's happened to the thousands of people who were inside. We're looking at pictures right now of many people on the streets, but Jeff, give us a sense of what you're seeing and hearing out there.
John, we're at the corner of Racine and Harrison. It's just a little bit west of downtown Chicago, and now a lot of these protesters are moving east toward the campus and toward downtown. Really, a lot of signs of the protesters are all anti-Trump, obviously. A lot of obscenities. We see a few Bernie Sanders signs and supporters here. Of course, he is not organizing this. A lot of local Chicago supporters, but this is a very anti-Trump sentiment, a very liberal crowd here, John. But it's very calm. It's very peaceful. We've been out here for a while and have not seen any throwing, any pushing, any shoving, a major Chicago police presence here. But it is very calm. I mean, this is nothing like a protest that we would have seen in Ferguson or anywhere else, John. This is very calm and orderly. But there is a sense that, that they have won, in a sense, that these protesters have won, and that Donald Trump will not be able to give his rally here tonight in Chicago. So that is one sign of victory from them. But we also saw some disappointed Trump supporters who were walking away from the rally. They wanted to see Donald Trump. They may vote for him on Tuesday in the Illinois primary, and they were disappointed they could not see him here. But John, on the street here outside, very peaceful at this hour.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Stand by. Jim Acosta, our Jim Acosta is actually outside right now. And Jim, before I bring you in, I just want to make clear again, what the Chicago Police Department has told us is no arrests have been made. There have been no injuries. And just a second ago, we got a statement from the Chicago Police Department that says the decision to cancel the event was not made by them. They didn't decide to call off the event. The Chicago Police Department did. So the implication there is it must have been the Trump campaign itself, Jim.
That's right. I mean, that is the announcement that was made inside this arena, that the Trump campaign decided, after talking with law enforcement, to cancel the rally that was supposed to take place tonight here in Chicago. I can tell you right now, we're standing on the corner of one intersection just outside this arena. I can see the Sears Tower looming on the horizon downtown. As Jeff was saying, it's fairly peaceful out here as well. When we came out just a few moments ago, there was a little bit of pushing, a little bit of shoving, but I think mostly what you're seeing out here is a lot of very excited, boisterous, protesters who came here tonight to disrupt this rally, and they feel like it's mission accomplished. They're very happy about the fact that they were able to stop this Trump rally. But I have to tell you right now, there are also some very disappointed Trump supporters. I'm standing next to one right now. Are you upset? What do you think about what happened tonight?
I would just like to say that these people are yelling out free speech, but they just shut down a speech by Donald Trump, and that just it doesn't make sense. They're shutting down people for giving his views, but exactly, like she's yelling power to the people, but people can't even speak. They're shutting them down. They're protesting, and things are not doing it the right way. There was just a fight like 20 seconds ago. It was crazy. Okay, there's people yelling and swearing. It's just insane.
Okay, thank you. So you can see, John, out here, that there are some tensions out here, but so far, nothing like what we saw inside that arena about an hour ago. No pushing, no shoving, happening right now. Things seem to be calming down, getting more peaceful, but at the same time, this is something that these protesters were hoping to do tonight, and they seem to have gotten what they wanted. At this point, I can tell you that we have seen pockets of law enforcement trying to get a hold of this situation. Just down the street, you can see a whole, I'm not even sure if our camera can get to it because it's behind so many crowds of people here. There's a whole group of Chicago police officers on horseback. Presumably they're positioned there just in case this escalates out here. But my sense of it right now, John, is that besides the occasional scuffle, besides the occasional pushing and shoving, most of these protesters out here are here to talk to the media, talk to themselves about what happened here tonight, because obviously this was a very wild scene. It's not something we typically see at a political rally on a daily basis, John.
All right, Jim, thanks so much. Stand by outside the